Hello, everybody. Welcome to a bi-week edition of the Seth and Gentry Show featuring Seth Emerson and
Gentry Estes, Dogs 24/7.
Which reminds me that I work for the Macon Telegraph and the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer. We don't normally do a bi-week edition of this show, but it kind of calls for it at this point. Gentry, we're going to keep this to kind of a state of the team kind of thing, not a rehash drive-by-drive of the Vanderbilt game or anything like that. There's been a lot of consternation out there, Gentry, but frankly, my belief is that there are some things that this team needs to get better at. But if you don't mention injuries, and if you don't consider that the overriding reason this team is 4-3, in my mind, you're not being really rational. What say you?
Yeah, no question. No question. I think that the last 2 weeks obviously were tough on this team. I think the Missouri game was one thing. I think that was a game where, with the players that were on the field, if they were to play 10 times, I'd give Missouri a good chance and probably at least half of them. Vanderbilt, not so much. Georgia had that game, and Georgia had no business losing that game. And the way it went, with the special teams miscues and the offense breaking down at the end, and obviously the targeting call, which was a huge play in the game,
right.
and Georgia has a right to be pretty upset about that. That was a bad turn.
Yeah.
And an unfair situation. They got to stop there.
They win it if that doesn't happen. They win it if, by the way, earlier on the drive to set that up, Swan doesn't muff the snap or muff the punt. They win it probably if Barber can catch that. I mean, there's a lot of thin lines between winning and losing, and
it's been a while since maybe Clemson, but really it's been a while since I felt like Georgia really found a way to lose a game. Mm-hmm. That was what was happening early in the 2010 season a little bit, and there was some of that in this game. Georgia lost that more than Vanderbilt won it, but all you can do now if you're Georgia is move on. I think there's a winnable game in Jacksonville next week, and
because the other team is even more banged up.
And if nothing else, nothing will make the Georgia team and fan base happier than beating Florida.
Well, we'll break down Florida more next week. But in terms of, you always hear this after a loss. People can be so reactionary, and they want blood. They want heads to roll. And at this point, that's just not realistic. I mean, after the season, some things could happen, but there's 5 games left at least, and then a bowl for that kind of stuff to hash out. It does. I hate to be repetitive, but injuries overhang everything. And the other thing is Todd Gurley's going to 95% chance he's going to play against Florida.
I believe.
If Todd Gurley gets back out there and he runs like we've seen him run, and Georgia wins that game, people are going to look back on this stretch and say, well, what if we'd had number 3?
They will, but I think the damage is done from the perspective of, when they got so close last year to playing for the whole thing. So you come into this season, see the experienced offense and everything they got back, and you expect a team that would be in contention for the BCS again. The preseason rankings suggested that. And, if nothing else, the SEC East. And, that Vanderbilt game was a killer for them, because had Georgia won that, the rankings nationally would still be pretty good. They would still be where you need to be.
Probably still in the top 10.
Still be where you need to be, SEC.
You still need Missouri to lose twice, but
I think that's
feasible.
Feasible. And now Missouri needs to lose 3 times, and there's a laundry list of things Georgia needs to have happen, including themselves winning out. Not say it's impossible, but and we just talked to Mark Rick. This was after practice on Thursday, and he made the point of he doesn't want to let the injuries define the season, but he seemed to understand that that's the deal.
When you're saying that, you're kind of implicitly
you're saying at this exact moment it is defining their season.
All right, then there's going to be still people who wonder about it. Are we just glossing over what are some real issues with this team? The injuries are mainly on offense, the vast majority. None of them are on the O-line. O-line.
David Andrews is out this week.
David Andrews is out, but he's played. In my mind, now you hear Arthur Lynch and Aaron Murray. They've talked about how they think Gurley out there just kind of changes the whole way a defense defends them, and he opens so many things up, and there's a lot to be said for that. But I think another way to look at it, and we saw against Vanderbilt, the O-line had kind of a step back. They had one of their bad games. not quite as bad as Clemson, but I think when you have, and this team said this, even Will Friend said this last year, he gave credit to the skill position players. And what you had for most of the last year and a half is great skill position players kind of masking at times the deficiencies of an O-line that's just not powerful. And when you don't have those skill position players, then the O-line kind of makes you look the way it did Saturday.
With Vandy, I don't necessarily think the O-line played terribly. I don't think they were great, but I think that what happened is Georgia didn't test the downfield at all with the passing game. They didn't have any kind of a downfield threat, so that safety for Vandy just kept creeping up and creeping up. The linebackers did too, and by the end of the game, they couldn't run right at them. There were a couple of runs where the safety was sitting there meeting the back at the line of scrimmage. That's the kind of situation where if you have Todd Gurley, you don't want to do that as much because Gurley can make that guy miss, and if he does, nobody's going to get him. So
I've said this. It's easy for people in this video game world we live in to say, oh, just punch up the downfield pass, just try something to Wooten or Conley or something. I might have tried it once or twice to keep the defense honest, but they just felt like they couldn't. And they probably did dial up a play like that or two, but Murray still doesn't trust these guys. They're moving
and
guys.
I think that there is the thing. And
I mean, they only played really 4 receivers. Kenneth Towns came in at the end, but
there's not an answer for this though.
No.
They're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, because they're getting Bennett back now, but they're losing Conley.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and God knows who could go out next game.
Right, and Wooten hadn't practiced this week either.
Yeah.
So I think that
we'll see how much Gurley cures all ills against Florida. On defense, Gentry, statistically, and the feel for it, defense had a better game against Vanderbilt. Did you consider it a real step forward?
Yes, but I think you need to also understand that Vandy played the whole second half with a backup quarterback.
Right.
That really, and that limited what they were doing quite a bit to have that guy in there instead of Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
They didn't throw it as much. They were a lot more tentative in what they were doing. But I do think Georgia's defense, and I've said this all year, when they play teams that allow them to be in their 3-4 base defense, Georgia's defense has been pretty good, especially against the run. Mm-hmm. And I think they've been much better in their base than they have their nickel. And against Vandy, they were in their base a lot.
And there's a reason
against Florida,
for that.
they're going to be in their base some. And I think
Yeah.
that
If you're looking for Gentry and I to get knocked down, drag out about which defensive personnel to use or not, because we both agree that they're better when they are using 3 cornerbacks, as in Damian Swan at the star, which was not the intention, but that's what ended up happening when Josh Harvey-Clemens got hurt, and they played better.
And what happened is Vandy put Jordan Matthews in the slot a lot early in that game and had some success with it. When you had Swan in the star, he was matched up with Jordan Matthews in the slot and did a much better job against him. And I think Swan himself just played a little better in that position. And I think it'll help him to have him there. Now, I don't know how much nickel they're going to be playing in this next game, but
I'm not sure Florida has anybody to play offense, so they keep losing guys.
I mean, that's the thing about this game.
Yeah.
Florida's the only team that I think would sit there and say they're in every bit as bad a shape as Georgia. And it's going to be
Maryland,
tough.
but they're not on the schedule.
I'll tell you this. We'll talk more about this next week. This is a huge game for Florida.
Yeah.
They have lost 2 games in a row to Georgia. They're not used to that, and I think that you're just looking at their schedule. They still got to play South Carolina. They got to play Florida State. This is a very big game for Florida to get their season kind of turned around. But it's big for Georgia too. You don't want to lose 3 games in a row.
It's weird. The loser of this game is going to be 4-4 and really feeling bad about itself and banged up. The problem is the loser of this game isn't going to have as good a case that they can blame injuries because they lost to a team that was also banged up. So it's very unlike last year where you had Florida number 2 and Georgia. I don't remember exactly where they were ranked, but they had the 1 loss this is a much different game, and we'll talk about it more next week. I was going to wrap this up by talking about special teams, but you know what? We could go on a while about that. So
you guys saw it. You'll know what happened.
Yeah, special teams coach. Don't ask Mark Richt about it. He's not. That's beating a dead horse. All right, Gentry. I'll see you. Before next week, but we'll see you all.
Everyone enjoy the bye weekend.
Yes.
We'll enjoy getting getting away from it a little bit and being able to watch some other games.
No Georgia football players will be hurt this weekend, probably. Talk to you later.